She'll be here.
Call this meeting to order. Do you want to do the introduction, or should we do approval of minutes? Either way.
Yeah, do the.
Okay. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes from our last meeting? Any changes that need to be made? Looking for a motion to approve? So moved.
Second.
Motion for Carol and,
Second.
oh, sorry, James, McVeigh, second, sorry about that. So the minutes have been approved. Oh, we'll approve those in a second. We have a motion in a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are approved.
Turn the time over to us?
Yep.
Okay. I'm ready to take a nap. Okay. Zach and I have been working really hard on this. I think as we get a few more years under our belt, I think we have a little more confidence and are better prepared and know what we're doing. So what you see before you tonight is a recommended budget presented to you. I think in the past we have broken up our budget meetings into different topics. This year, what we'll be doing today is we'll be presenting everything today that we did over 3 meetings previously. It's going to be a lot of information, and we'll get through it. And then all the future meetings are for the budget committee to discuss, deliberate, and things like that. So with that, we've got, okay, oh, I even had an agenda up here. There we go. So we've got 2.5 hours. We don't have to use all of it, but we'll stop at least by then. So let me jump right in. So here is the kind of what I'll be sharing with you today. Talk a little bit about the organization of the budget. We have some new committee members, some new counselors. Share a little bit about the budget message and overview of the budget. Then we'll go through some of the major funds: the general fund, our utilities, our capital projects, our departmental requests, and our city manager recommendations. Actually, I think the department requests are moved up a little bit like that. Looks like I changed it from when I put the agenda together, but that's kind of what we're hoping to get through today, whereas in the past, we usually did 1 meeting on this, 1 meeting on this, and 1 meeting on that. So that's the goal for today. So for those of you who are new, this is new to you. Government budgeting is different than in a private business. It's similar to how budgeting and finances are done in a nonprofit organization. We call it fund accounting. And so we're going to talk a lot about different funds that the city has. A fund is a pool of money designated for a specific purpose, such as running a city's daily operations or achieving certain objectives. Each fund has its own accounts that must balance, meaning the money coming in and out should be equal. One way to learn, heard it described as a different checkbook for every fund. You all know what that means. Anyone younger than me won't know what that means. So here are the funds that we have, the different types of funds in Seaside. These are the major ones, and then we have some kind of one-offs. General fund, this is the main pool of money used for the city's everyday expenses and operations like paying employees and maintaining public services. This is the bulk of it, and we're going to spend most of our time on the general fund. Enterprise funds, these funds are used for services that the city provides and charges for, including water, sewer, and the convention center. The money collected from these services is used to cover the costs. So these are, think of it as like running their own business. They should cover them, their revenue should cover their expenses. Whereas things like the library don't generate enough revenue to cover their expenses, and that's the point. Special revenue funds, these are funds that are set aside for specific purposes, often because the money comes from a particular source that must be used a certain way, like grants or taxes for specific services. Then the last of the major are capital projects fund. These funds are used to pay for major city projects like building new roads and parks. They cover the costs of construction and other large-scale improvements. Some other minor ones, we have debt service funds. So when we issue bonds or any kind of debt, we set up a separate fund and we transfer money in there and use that to pay the bonds. We have one trust fund, and that is for the library. There's some money set aside there. Have we discovered how we got that yet?
No, is the short answer to that. Typically, the trust funds, though, it usually comes to us when someone passes away and says, "Hey, I want to give the Seaside Library $5,000 out of my estate to buy books for kids." It's things with really specific purposes.
And that also involved Elder Cruz's donation years ago. That he gave to the student director. I think he gave about $500,000 or something ridiculous amount.
I
Even named something after him in the library.
I would have to check.
But that is the type of thing that could be set up with a trust.
Yeah.
I vaguely remember hearing that it was, there was a big fundraising going on to actually build the library. I don't think the city did that. I think it was private individuals.
Gotcha.
And the money that was left over after the building was finished, I think, is where that came from.
Okay. Road district fund, we have a road district, and the funds are used to obviously maintain the roads, in addition to funding that we get from the state gas tax for roads. And then urban renewal fund, we'll talk a little bit about that later. We have an improvement commission that oversees the urban renewal agency, and no one here is on it except for the council, right? Or some of you are. You're double dipping. And then, so we will have at one point, we'll have a combined meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee, which is 28 people. I still think there's got to be a way to
becomes a very full room.
pare that down. So these are the different funds. Here is, we have 35 different funds. Actually, it's 37. We still have a tiny bit of revenue trickling into an old, closed-out urban renewal agency, but I did not include that one. We're talking a couple $100s. So
I thought Zach told us we would be down to like 85 this year.
That's
Soon,
That's
very
still a
soon.
work in progress. That's still a work in
So
progress.
I will say, my goal would be to roll a lot of these together. And once we're really, so we're in the midst of implementing and starting up with our new financial software, which is fantastic. Once that's ironed out, everything's going smoothly. I can see all of these being combined into one. These combined into maybe 3 or 4 or 4 or 5. These ones, we'll see. We'll see. Some of the other minor ones don't matter as much, but really the revenue source, say, for these is all the same, and so it just means that there's a whole lot of transfers going on and stuff like that. So we'll be looking forward to that. It should make our audits cheaper and easier too. So within our funds, we have departments, and then within each department, we've grouped all the expenses into personnel, materials and services, and capital in terms of the operating expenses for these departments. All right, let me talk a little bit about the budget message. So a couple of the accomplishments that are included in the budget message that were completed last year, either big projects or other things. Acquisition of Estuary Park, improvements to the wastewater treatment plant, seismic improvements for the public safety buildings, the implementation of financial software. Now this is through the end of the fiscal year, so we still have through June to finish that. And then getting our pavement preservation study done to understand the condition of our roads. So my goal for this next year for the budget is to enhance the quality of life of residents while boosting the city's resilience and operational efficiency. I think the message we've had for a few years now is I think the city's been underinvesting, and that's coming back to cost us a lot more. And so we are trying to make the necessary improvements so that over the long period, I think we're being the wisest with the city's money. And so along those lines, some of the major things you'll see are increased investment in water, wastewater, and streets infrastructure. Both the wastewater and the streets is going to need new revenue sources. The pavement preservation study that was done said we're right at the verge of the majority of our streets being in fair condition, and if we can keep them, we can get them back to good condition, but if we don't do anything, they'll go into poor condition, which is a lot more expensive. But in order to do that, that study says we need to spend $20 million over the next 5 years, and we have about $4 million saved up for road projects, and we receive about $1 million a year. So there is some work to be done to identify new revenue sources to pay for those improvements. And in the meantime, it's going to be prioritizing the projects that we can do with the funds that we do have in the way that will make the best financial sense in the long run, which will likely be focused on preserving the fair street as opposed to, say, rebuilding a really bad street, which isn't popular, but it's very expensive to put all your money, say, into one street. Go ahead.
Move on from that. You say investment in water, wastewater, and street infrastructure. Are you including stormwater as well in there, or are we just talking about water delivery and wastewater disposal?
Just talking about those. We don't have any stormwater projects planned for this next year.
So that's not on the radar at all.
Can I add to that? We don't have Astoria's got a dedicated stormwater fund in addition to water and sewer and some of the other enterprise funds they have. Seaside does not. So Seaside's stormwater expenses would typically be spent out of sewer or streets. I mean,
Both.
It becomes a little more gray.
So is that something that then basically just gets disregarded because we are under stress already with street funding and other infrastructure funding?
I don't think it's disregarded. What do you mean by?
It's not in the budget, so there's
Well,
money
No,
set aside for it, so-
these are increased investments. We already do, as an example, street sweeping. The purpose of street sweeping, you may think it's for keeping the streets looking nice. It's actually to keep the storm drains clear, and so that's already happening. That's budgeted out of the streets department. Other things like jetting activities and stuff like that, streets department does, the sewer department does some. So it's being done, but it's being done already within existing departments, but not as a dedicated enterprise fund.
So if the money for stormwater is coming out of the street fund, and we're needing money in the street fund, should we at some point be considering having a stormwater fund like Astoria does?
I think that's absolutely something we need to talk about. We probably would want to do some consolidation of services, so it's not kind of spread out, but it's put into one area with one area of responsibility. And that certainly may be one of the things we look at when we talk about increased street funding is pulling out those storm drain expenses to free up funds that were street funds that we're using for storm drain.
I noticed parks are on there. Is that in the continued focus on one-time capital investments, or where
Yes.
does that fit in?
Yeah, and we'll talk parks. Other areas of focus: improved public safety response. These are all things we'll get a little more into. These are just kind of high-level things that I see. Very cautious about including any ongoing budget commitments. We're in a position, going to the next line, where we have some good reserves that we can be investing in better equipment and our infrastructure, but being very cautious in committing to any ongoing expenses, as we only see a small amount of growth in our revenue. Who knows what the economy will look like over the next few years. The nice thing is that we are somewhat insulated from some of those. If we have a downturn, generally speaking, property tax is the most stable revenue source, but we have quite a few other revenue sources as well. But unlike other states, we're not at the whim of the sales tax, which goes up and down quite a bit. So, okay. So the approach we try to take is everything in the budget is the same, with the exception of what's on this list, and there may be some other minor things. So we've updated the personnel costs. We have 2 unions, and so all of those costs have been updated. That includes things like insurance. We have other pass-through expenses where there is a dedicated revenue source. So as an example, the convention center's one where convention goers receive a bill for their food services. They pay the city, the convention center, and then we turn around and cut a check to Oregon Fine Foods. And so where those were needed and there's a corresponding revenue, those have been changed. And any other contractual expenses like that. Other than that, the only other things that have been included in this budget are the recommended budget requests, and that's what we'll get to by the end of the presentation.
So are you increasing any FTEs?
Yes. That's part of the cautious on the ongoing, but where needed.
Can I add one thing, Spencer? The one thing on that just came to mind that's on this list is a thing that we've mentioned in the past, but it's worth mentioning here again. In terms of capital projects, if we didn't get the project done and it's a project that is going to continue into next year, it's going to look like that line has been altered from previous years, but it's that project continuing.
So if we had a project budgeted, capital project for $1 million, and we've spent $200,000 of it, we're going to carry forward $800,000. Okay, very high level revenue expenditures. One of the problems with having so many different funds is there are so many overlapping transfers that if you add it all up, our budget is 3 times the size of what it actually is. Anticipated revenue for next year, about $33 million. Total budgeted operational expenses, $41 million. So you can see we're going to plan on spending $8 million more than we take in. But that is anticipated. When you're spending capital projects, you're building capital projects, you're spending money you've saved up. And so that's the case. We're not overspending on our operations compared to new revenue coming in. But that's kind of that very high level breakdown. So if someone says, what our budget is, Zach, we'd say the $41 million?
Correct.
Okay, jumping in a little bit on the budget requests. We'll go through these. For those of you who are able to attend, we had our department heads provided a kind of some background on all of these. I don't know, a few months ago. It's all a blur now. I think in February. If you haven't seen it and you do want more details, I think it's on YouTube, and we can send you the link and get you any information you want. So going through these in the general fund, and so you'll see I've separated these out between one-time and ongoing expenses, and the reason for that is we can use savings that we have for the one-time, but the ongoing is what we're committed to moving forward. So you have to have confidence that the money will be there next year. So going through these, the first is these sliding doors, which are a complete pain, and we've even had a workers' comp injury on someone trying to move them. We've tried to have them repaired many, many times, and it doesn't stick. So that's one of the projects. There's also a request to replace the main doors at City Hall. The doors are old, but also the ADA access functionality is problematic at best. So we want to get that fixed, obviously. There has been talk about doing some other renovations within City Hall on the other side. Library, so the library was, what year was the library built?
10 years ago.
10 years ago? The HVAC system, I should have had the picture, but it consists of like 10 separate residential units that there's a big bank of them, and none of them talk to each other. And so some of the feedback Jennifer has received is that sooner rather than later, there will probably that'll probably need to be redone. This is just a budget to have a mechanical firm or an HVAC firm come in and analyze it and design something for us. Once we understand what the cost is, then we'll circle back on that. But we don't know what that is yet. There is a request for the library. This was on a request last year that wasn't funded, to reclassify the youth library assistant from 30 hours to 40 hours. It's an extra 10 hours that can be used for programming, for youth services, but the cost is $40,000 because the threshold to receive benefits, it kicks in after 30 hours. And so that's why the cost is so high for those extra hours. And then there's also a request to do a library furniture request. And this comes for two reasons. One, it gets heavily used. It doesn't always get used by the most sanitary individuals. And it's a lot of it is now currently materials that aren't great for cleaning. How about that? And so that would be a one-time expense. And I think it's talking to Jennifer. She kind of hopes to do parts of the library kind of each year, and this would be kind of a year one.
Before you go on to the next page,
Mm-hmm.
the council sliding doors and the main doors, are those actual estimates now, or are they still just rough guesses?
Do you remember?
They're rough guesses.
Yeah.
Okay, so we still don't know for sure any sort of real numbers that might actually be.
Some of it comes from talking to some of our staff that have more expertise than I do on some of those costs, but this is a placeholder till we get quotes and narrow it down.
And the $40,000 for the library assistant is additional to the money already?
Yes.
For that? Okay, thank you. I wanted to make sure I was understanding.
Yeah. Public safety fund budget requests. There's a patrol vehicle replacement. The police department have about 10, 12 vehicles. And they're on a pretty good program where they basically rotate out one per year. So I think the one this year, I think, is up around 140, 150,000 miles. They are driven hard, the nature of the work. And so it's been a good program to do one per year, and it kind of helps us keep on top of it. Unlike some other departments we'll talk about in a little bit. The next is to reclassify the communications manager. This is the who oversees dispatch. In a previous year, there was a similar request. It was a request to reclassify the position to be equal to a lieutenant in the department, and that was something I didn't recommend. This is a reclassification to be on the same pay range level as the sergeants, which I think is completely appropriate. And for this individual who is topped out at the 5th step, they would go up one range, which is 1 step, and then they'll be topped out again, but it's 5%. The next one are taser replacements. I'm trying hard to say something nice about taser. Pretty soon, I think we're going to be on a subscription-based thing where we'll have to charge the account, and every time we just deploy it, they'll charge us or something. They're rolling out new hardware. It won't support the old hardware. So this is the cost to do that. Hopefully it's good. We want to get at least 5 years out of it. Anything else you'd say, Zach, on the tasers besides what we personally feel towards it?
There's not a lot of alternatives to this specifically because the company who owns the trademark for taser, they're called Axon, and they've basically got a monopoly on the entire market. So if any of you have HBO, John Oliver did a
It's on YouTube,
did a complete show about this in the last 2 weeks, where basically, I mean, they are useful. I don't think anyone will argue. They don't come without their risks, but their risks are certainly better than pulling out an actual pistol. But as a result of them having a monopoly on the market, they can basically charge whatever they want. And the place that they get you, our tasers that we have right now are functional, but where they get you is that they won't, if we were to use a taser on someone and they sued the city, Taser Axon will not send an expert out to support that in court if they're no longer servicing that equipment. So that's where the risk doesn't necessarily make sense in terms of the city and not updating our equipment and falling into line with everyone else.
How many tasers do we have?
We've got 22 officers, and I would suspect we have a couple extra, so we probably have somewhere between 23 and 25 if I had to just ballpark it. I don't know the actual number, but that would be my assumption.
What do you do with the old tasers? Sell them on eBay.
Yeah, surplus.
Facebook Marketplace.
Give them to the high school.
The fire department has requested 2 full-time firefighters. One of the critical areas for us is we continue to see increased calls for service is the after-hours responses. Traditionally, when I say traditionally, over the last 20, 40 years, we've had a great volunteer corps that gets smaller and smaller with each year, which is very common for what we would call a combined department, combined paid employees and volunteers. And so we still continue to recruit, and we do get new people, but we took a big loss last year. We had one volunteer who happened to be a police chief in a neighboring city who volunteered almost every evening. And so right now, if there is a call in the evenings, it's someone responding from home and an intern that's at the station. And so eventually what we are trying to build to is some kind of 24-hour coverage, minimum coverage, so that they're available to respond.
By paid staff.
What's that?
By paid staff.
By paid staff, correct. Yeah, and it may be that there are ways to support that with paid part-time as well, if there are firefighters from other jurisdictions that want to sign up for shifts and things like that. There's still some more work to do, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later, but it's the direction that we're going to eventually need to go.
How much of this might be affected by the fact that we now have ambulance service?
Very little. This is just the nature of the calls we get, and so medics is still the first responder for most medical calls. In fact, is our ambulance back in service? It's been out for a little while for repairs.
Any day. They blew the engine in it. Well, the engine blew in it. They didn't blow the engine. The engine blew in it. As many of you know, it was a used vehicle when we got it. So we've had it in Portland getting the engine serviced for the last month or so.
Gosh.
But Joey was supposed to go and get it yesterday, and I guess it was held for another day.
And I'm not sure this is the right place, but I just want to float the question out there is whether our ambulance service is kind of paying for itself.
We need to go do the work. By paying for itself, yes, because we haven't brought on extra staffing for the ambulance. There were some upfront costs. In fact, I think we paid more for the stretcher than for the ambulance. Yeah. So the arrangement we have with medics is that we only respond during certain hours when we have staffing. First, they have to call us, and then we only respond if they've called us and we have staff available. And so it would be, so yes, it's any revenue we get there is extra money we're receiving, but it's, yes, we bill out. And in fact, one of the things where it's actually been helpful is with the billing, when we go out on Highway 26 for a traffic accident, we bill for that as well, even if we don't transport. So we bill the insurance company, the auto insurance, for the costs associated with that call. It would be different if we were the first caller, but we would have to have dedicated staffing, not just staffing when available. But I will say this is it's been a good way to kind of put your toe in the water, kind of a slow, soft opening maybe for ambulance service. There were some grumblings from other cities within the county over the past year with medics, specifically with their staffing and with the certifications of the people that were responding. They weren't all paramedics the way they were supposed to, and so some of that, though, has to do with just what the market is like these days. However, they have a new local manager, and my understanding is they're doing much better at being staffed at a level that people aren't waiting too long. So that also has meant we didn't need to respond as much. So there was a request from the fire department for increased materials and services budget, as Joey went through there. And then from dispatch, there's a request for a repeater and microwave, more on the servicing north of Seaside. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. So for you,
Service that we contract out for?
yeah, so we bill Gearhart and Cannon Beach for these services, and that's part of what I'll circle back on. Public Works Fund budget requests. Okay, so There's a radar speed trailer. I think this was originally supposed to be one of those flashing signs of how fast you're going. But what we really want, that I've told them, is it'll be something that gets accurate counting. So it's not a device to slow people down. It's to measure traffic volumes, traffic speeds, so we have better data and can make more informed decisions on traffic. We do get a lot of requests. Hey, people are speeding in my neighborhood, and right now the best we can do is have an officer sit out there and radar, and it's not a great use of time, and they typically don't find the level of speeding that oftentimes the residents think is there, and so.
So is this not another one of those?
No, typically this will be like it's like 2 rubber tubes that goes across the road with a little box and something like that.
It's not a trailer.
That's not a radar speed trailer then?
Yeah, that's what was requested, and that's what I'm turning it into, because that's what we need.
So from experience, having had those radar signs in our neighborhood a couple times, a couple years ago now, they were very effective, especially in slowing down contractors, UPS and FedEx. Because the amount, the pedal to the metal that they were exceedingly using going through a residential neighborhood was very much reduced by the amount that they saw they were
Sure.
speeding through the neighborhood.
So we do have one. My experience has been, though, they are good initially, but they need to be moved around. And I've seen places where they put permanent ones in, and within a month or two, they're almost invisible to people that live in the area. So it's a good thing when you have a particular problem area for an initial thing, but long-lasting, the better approach is different design and other ways to calm the road traffic rather than trying to get people to remember. I mean, we all know not to speed, and we all speed, so.
Well, I mean.
Well, I do.
Since we purchased, the city purchased the radar signs that they own now, which I thought there were 2 of.
There may be
The laws have changed, and there could actually be radar tickets issued by the city, and which wasn't the case when they were originally purchased. And what you're talking about from what is more of a traffic count thing than it is a speed measurement tool, and that.
Well, it would collect the data on speeds.
Okay. But that has different implications as far as safety in the community and the neighborhoods than the radar signs, which now have also more capabilities other than issuing tickets. Could also gather more of the other data that you're talking about.
We get a lot of people that come and say, oh, people are speeding, but the only time we see it is when an officer is sitting there. With this, we would know how fast people are going over a week. We can see what all the different sides, and then we can make changes to the streets themselves or the speed limits or other.
Thanks, I got that from what he was saying.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is that the actual radar speed trailers now can do all of those things and show people how fast they're going. And then potentially also be used for issuing tickets without the officer there.
So that is something, if our council.
Like the smarter investment.
Exactly.
And if the council wants to get into photo radar, that would be a discussion for them. I will say the purpose of the counters I'm looking at is not so that it doesn't help for people to know they're speeding and trying to get a count to see if they're speeding going on, because it's like you're doing an experiment and you don't have a control group or something. You're kind of putting your finger on the scale. So if you put up a sign that says slow down or you're going this fast, it might come back and say, oh, there's no speeding here. What you need is something where people are kind of oblivious to an actual counter being there. So.
I see them as 2 different purposes there.
Okay, so we have a need for new and better equipment within Public Works, and the staff in there have come up with a novel idea where we have an older sweeper where the sweeper part is we don't use, but the vehicle itself is in good shape, and so they want to convert it to a swap loader. And my understanding is what that means is that there are different attachments that can be put out, like a dump bed or other pieces of machinery and stuff like that. And so it becomes a multi-purpose truck rather than just a sweeper or a backup sweeper. And so they've made that request. There's a request for the parks budget for increase in building maintenance. The big thing is just getting some major repairs done to most of the parks restrooms. This was something Ed Arden, he was our interim public works director and project manager, had put together. I can already tell our new public works director is seeing more work that needs to be done from his engineering eye within our parks. This was that request though, so that may be something that as we get more input from our new public works director, that may change. But most of the, I might say all of our public restrooms in our parks need some TLC.
Did we ever get the new roof on the Public Works building?
No, we'll come to that. It's in a future slide.
I know we've discussed it for years, but I'm just curious where we're at with that.
Let's see, mill ponds. We have a problem with some invasive weed, and there's probably lots of invasive weed. There's a particular patch of something that's really nasty. At one point, they thought it was I can't remember what it was called. I don't know, Bill, if you remember. There was something that was really bad that's supposed to put you in the hospital. What they determined it was, it's not weed, but it does need to get taken care of, or it will take over the mill ponds. And so we want to take care of that now before it grows too much. Vehicle replacements. So this is, again, I go back to investing in our departments. The vehicles in Public Works is a hodgepodge of vehicles after they are beyond their useful life for other departments. They get passed to the Public Works Department, who drive them for 10 more years. It's not a great practice, and in addition to the high cost of maintenance and downtime and things like that, there is also something, when we want to retain our employees, some of that is the pride and the feeling that the city's taking care of them and getting the equipment, the tools that they need to do the job. And so we want to get to a point where we have reliable vehicles in Public Works, and then at some point we get to where the police department is, where we're just replacing a vehicle per year or something like that. But we have some work ahead of us to get there. We started that last year. I believe we purchased 4 new vehicles in the current year, and this continues there. This was, I think this was 3. Then last one is, this was kind of.
Just one thing on that. Is that kind of a net number? Because you're obviously spending a lot on maintenance and repairs for all these old vehicles.
Yeah.
Is that,
It's not a net number, but we'd hope to see those go down.
what I'm saying is there maybe should be a credit in the ongoing expense, because
Yes.
you don't have to.
I kind of want to see those savings first, and the other part is, it's taking us so long to get vehicles that we may budget for it,
Maybe more.
but we've got to repair the ones until they get here. I know, like for the police vehicles, the orders open up once a year for the police vehicles. Around the country, people put their orders in, and then 6 to 9 months later, they arrive. So it's kind of what we're dealing with. The nice thing is we can piggyback on the competitive bidding process that the state has, which has some significant savings, which includes the next one. This was not one that was presented with the department head updates, but has been added since then in talking with our new public works director. And that's a skid steer, so think of like a Bobcat type thing, but with tracks on it. As we think of the new, the best example of how it's going to be used is the new homeless campsite. There'll be these individual areas for campers with these big blocks kind of delineating the areas. Some of you have seen what it's like cleaning up campsites at the old camp. Kind of some of it by hand, some of it with a little excavator that they have. With a skid steer, it's if it's a really bad situation, they just push it in, dispose of it, and it's much less contact for employees. Also, a skid steer will be able to get back into the back of mill ponds and other places like that, in addition to within the streets department and water and sewer. There are all kinds of uses for it that they'll be able to use, including tools that can be attached. So we found through the state contract, another agency recently purchased one, and the base price on the model they got was probably 30% lower than the MSRP, and so we'll take advantage of those, that competitive bidding. Community development. Our community development folks no longer want to have paper copies of the international code. Normally for a $1,000 budget request, we say find it within your existing budget, you can do that. They have maxed out their budget, and so we have that in there. Just so you know, like for the building department, everything is electronic now. If you're a builder, if you're submitting plans, it's all done electronically. The plan reviews are done electronically, so our building official will make notes right on the plans, hit save, and they go right back to the builder with those comments. Everything's done online, and this will go with it, and this will be kept up to date as opposed to buying paper books. Emergency preparation, I have a couple of requests. One is a backup power generator up at the Emergency Operations Center. The current one that is there now, we have several of these around the city. They are World War II era generators. I think the last couple times we couldn't get it to start. And so that is something that is being requested as during an emergency. That is something that we will want to have. The tsunami barrel cache restocking, how long ago, have they been restocked before, or was it the initial time that they went out? Some of you are much more familiar with this than I am.
3 or 4 years ago, they restocked them all with.
Okay, I think it's probably been 4 years, because I think it's every 5 years is when the contents expire. We're not sure how we will do that project. My understanding is there were a lot of volunteers last time, and we know that the properties or the homes that have them, as I was talking to Ann McBride about this, but sometimes if we need to restock or they don't want it anymore, they're like, come get it. That's what they tell Ann. And so it's like, oh, it's in the back of our basement or our garage over here behind all this other stuff. So sounds like a fun project. And then an interesting one, tsunami siren maintenance. We've done some testing in the last year. We have employees that go out during the testing of the system, and sometimes they're working, sometimes they're not, and we've had some repairs done. The repairs are not cheap. That right there is about what we spent this year to repair one of them. We have many. At some point, if we're going to continue this, we probably need new ones. But if we're going to continue in the short term, there is some maintenance needed. I have quite a few thoughts on that we can save for a future discussion, possibly here or later.
I think those are about 12 to 15 years old,
Sounds about right.
because we replaced them when I worked at Job Corps, and we gave our old ones to Tongue Point. Because I made that happen.
Yeah. Oh.
So that's about when I remember that happened.
I mean, they're out in the weather. It's, especially when you're close to the beach, it's a rough environment.
We have 4 of them?
No, we have like 10 or 12 or something.
Dozen, I
Yeah.
think,
Including one in Gearhart, although Gearhart pays to maintain theirs, but yeah. So we have some along the beach, but we also have some back here. We have some in the middle, and that'll,
It was interesting
Part
seeing
of
the
the
map on where they were placed, because someone put a lot of thought into that. They were spread out pretty good.
Yeah.
So,
some of the discussion is what technological advances are there now? Do we already have the capabilities of? And that's a discussion that we should have. Non-departmental budget requests. This is for IT, a new server, virtual server, and then budget for, this isn't a computer replacement, this is computers replaced, right? Throughout the city. We do have quite a few aging ones. Okay, one slide for all the enterprise funds. Convention center, replacement of the sound system in the Pacific Room, which is the largest room. So by philosophy, I think the city's philosophy on the convention center has been where we are very cautious in the general fund and other areas. This is one area where we have competition and we need to be, you know, at I don't want to say cutting edge, but we need to be up there and competitive with other venues. And the current system is quite old and does not have many of the capabilities. And there's also some sound engineering that needs to happen so that the sound is better wherever you are in the room. And there's some technology I can't explain that does that.
When we look at this list, going all the way down to Visitors Bureau, would all of that qualify to be paid by tourism funding?
Yes, and I would add the airport as well to it at the bottom.
Oh, airport at the bottom.
Yeah, yes.
I'm having trouble.
Yeah, so convention center and visitors bureau, those are all paid for out of our transient lodging taxes. And that's one of the ways it's easier for our convention center to stay state-of-the-art and competitive, is because we have a strong funding source for that.
Does the city get money, speaking of airport, sorry, I skipped all the other stuff in between just because it jumped into my brain. Does the city get money from the port for the airport?
No.
Yeah, dream on.
No, I mean, well,
So.
I asked.
So there is no revenue for our airport. However, in the past there has been revenue from FAA. We currently don't qualify for that. However, some of the funding here is for some smaller projects that, if done, will put us in a better position to again qualify. So you need to have 10 home-based airplanes, hangars, or something like that, in order to qualify for FAA funding. We have 5 or 6, so there are plans to build more. We own the land, they're privately owned, and so we would work with builders to do that, or individuals. And so I think the goal is to have at least 12 hangars, so hopefully there's 10 that are based here. And then there typically is enough to do things like the maintenance on the asphalt and some other things that are kind of necessary for the airport.
I believe we've asked for money from the port before, given that all of our residents pay taxes into the port district. We should be entitled to some money from the port for the airport.
But that's not what the port says.
Not the port, yes, that's right. We have to get the taxpayers to get on board and rah that.
But just because it's been turned down previously doesn't mean it shouldn't be asked again.
Sounds like a good job for our council liaison to the airport. Chris, if you're listening or watching later.
On the convention center, I don't see anything about the HVAC. Did we solve that, or?
That's still on these are anything new.
Isn't that this year?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of projects that are this year that are carrying over. New website, Visitors Bureau is just wrapping up their new website. Convention Center needs one. The main thing is providing more tools for prospective bookings that can go on and get a better idea of the things that are available and just more interactive in that area. And then an increase in the operations budget. I have the details. There's about 8 different things where, as Brian has been able to track it now over a couple of years, we're consistently over budget on different maintenance things. And so if you want that breakdown, we can provide that. We need a new garbage truck because it primarily services the prom. We're calling it the prom garbage truck so that we can be paying for it that way. And they're not cheap. And I don't know how we purchased the last one, but the last one you have to lift up. It's not great from a workers' compensation and for our employees, and so we'll have one that's much easier for them to use. But during the high season, this is going 7 days a week, and this is regularly used. And so I believe the one we have now we would keep as a backup. They get heavily used. I think last 4th of July they emptied garbages, and there were some fireworks that were still going and started a fire. They had to go find a street somewhere and dump it all out so they could put it out. Am I adding gas to the fire, Tita?
You are adding
Okay.
gas to the fire.
An increase in the budget. So the Visitors Bureau pays our association fees for the World Mark. This is for the parking garage. And
Are they
so
increasing it?
there are increases each year, and we've just never updated their budget. So they've ended up kind of going over in that item, but under somewhere else. So this is to kind of get them caught up
How
there.
many parking spots?
2 floors.
First and second.
Yeah,
How
and
many
it's,
spots is that?
oh, I don't know.
Gotta be 70.
It's way more expensive than I think it should be, because
Yeah, I agree.
that's about, we pay about $5,000 or $6,000 a month for that.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Another reason to have a vertical evacuation tower.
So Josh has some plans to update, redesign the tourism grant program. He wants to split it into 2 different types of grants. So basically the budget would be $50,000, and 25 of that would be for kind of tourism promotion events like they've typically been doing. But what they've seen more and more of are requests for like tourism related, like community art and beautification projects and things like that. The kiosk was an example that SDA got money for that and things like that. So kind of dividing them up and getting a little more specialized. We're going to award grants in this area and award grants in the other area.
I would just say that the request for art came from the tourism committee.
Was it the TAC?
Yeah.
Okay. Within water, a vehicle replacement, 2 of those in sewer. Yeah, don't ask me. I should tell them to round the numbers, because otherwise they're going to say, show me the quote. They probably have one, but. And then within the sewer, we have a truck, we have a TV truck where we go and TV the sewer lines. The video equipment and the truck are all one piece of equipment. And it is old. I think it all stays on the truck unless you burn a DVD in the truck of it. It doesn't save. Anyways, we need to modernize that, and the new equipment can be used with any truck. So this is, they'll go out, part of keeping our liability down on sewer backups is going out and on a regular schedule TVing the line so you can see problematic areas ahead of time, but also when we have leaks or other problems in the sewer line, they can diagnose them quite a bit faster. And then the airport maintenance, I think this cost is mostly has to do with, there's quite a bit of vegetation removal, reduction, or trees, stuff like that, where it's growing up and encroaching on the airspace of the landing area. Okay, so those are all the budget requests from the different departments. One last thing that is kind of one of those optional things that we were looking at. For those of you, this has been an ongoing discussion since I got here the last 2 years. Our pension is really not funded well. So the top part up here, this is the funding level. Obviously, this was the 2008, what happened in the stock market, built up, but it's just gradually been getting lower and lower. Obviously, a perfectly funded pension is at 100%. I think the Oregon PERS is at about 77. And we are higher than that 55 now because of changes we started implementing 2 years ago, then again last year. Things to do with even the model anticipated a certain rate of return, but the city's investments were much more conservative that weren't projected to get that return, and it's been that way for a long time. So that was updated. We have been contributing more. As you can see here, this is the percent of an employee's salary that goes towards a pension. This is extremely high and very expensive. However, the sooner we can get to the funding level we need it to be, we can start bringing that back down. I wish we could say we'll see this again. I don't know if that's true, will ever happen, but I think we can realistically get it down to here, which would be a significant savings for the city and free up for the city. So this is where we were 2 years ago, and this is where we are today. So we got this slide. We have an actuary that does the analysis for us. He's fantastic. There was an older one. He retired from the Standard. New one's great. The Standard, provides our pension. This is such a it's smaller and smaller amount of their business that they no longer have an actuary. So we have gone out and contracted for that separately. The previous guy would just tell us what the problems are and say, what do you want to do? And we're like, we're not pension experts. The actuary we have now is comfortable saying, here are your options, and this is what I recommend, which is a lot better. Last year was a fantastic year for the pension. So when we met about a month ago, he gave us the good news of how much ahead we were by the end of our fiscal year, July 1st of last year, and because of that, we are right on track. I haven't talked to him in the last couple of weeks, so I don't know if that's all gone or not. We'll see. It changes daily. I don't open my 401k savings. I'll start looking at that when I get closer. So we take the long view on this. So this is, so if we look at, we are at about 30.5%. I think he was thinking we were at 30%, so that's what he modeled. So these lines here get you, actually,
How long ago did he model this?
a month ago. Yeah. There was a bigger chart, and I cut out some of this and some of that so you could see more detail, and I think these lines shifted, because I think these lines, aren't these supposed to be between, 80 to 90. So when this reshifted, I didn't notice that these were, so don't pay attention to those black lines. We're trying to get between these two areas. And so I zoomed in so you could see. So on our current trajectory at 30%, so we are right here. follow the yellow line, and we get to right here in 2032, we would get to 80%, and then 2035 and a half is when we would get to 80%. That's at the current rate. The high end, he said, was 36. That's the gray. Obviously, we would get there within 5 years. And doing all the modeling, what his recommendation was, if you get to 32% and hold that for a few years, that's about the right time frame. Then you will start to see, well, the goal would be to hold that level of funding, and at that point, we'll start to see the contribution rates come down. So I will say, when we started this 2 years ago, I thought this was the 15 to 20-year plan. But on our current track, what is that? If we wanted to get to 80, right here, 31, so we're talking 6 years. So in the long-term scheme of investing, that's pretty good. I'll take that. Any questions on pension funding?
No, but I do want to go back to equipment. I am concerned that we do not have a generator at the community center.
Okay, there will be time for that.
All right.
And then showed the one that he recommended and that we're also recommending as well. So this is what that cost is. It gets broken out into the different funds, since our employees are paid through all the different funds, and so we need a 1.5% contribution increase. That's where the cost is. If we do this, though, this is the last year that we need to increase it. We can just hold steady. Obviously, the model anticipates good years and bad years, and so that's anticipated. This is really to correct the structural issue of significant underfunding in it for a good amount of time. Okay, so let's get on to our, talk a little bit about our utilities. We're going to talk sewer, and we're going to talk water. So I've put on here, we have 2 years actual, so these years are all closed out. Here is the current year we're in. This is what Zach projects will be by the end of the year and what's being proposed. So we have our revenue up here. These are all expenses, and then we have our revenue or our loss from year to year. And again, because we're spending a significant amount of capital, it shows as loss, which is fine. What I don't want is losses on an operational standpoint, meaning that we are taking in user fees enough to run the department. Now, ideally, it should be that, and we're setting aside some for capital as well. But you can see what kind of a hit that is doing to our kind of our ending balance. So both in the water and the sewer, it is, we can talk about a comfort zone where we want to be. So this anticipates a 3% increase. So as we looked at it for the budget committee, what we'd be looking for is a recommendation for the budget amount. How that gets put onto, how the 3% increase in revenue gets translated into utility rates will be a discussion that we have with the council when we go to adopt the budget.
You're talking about another 3% rate increase coming up?
Yeah.
What was our rate increase last year?
Didn't we have 2 years?
I'd have to look at what the exact number was, but it was north of 15% of 20 on both water and sewer.
Our
So
goal was to take care of that and then be able to have an annual,
right.
kind of an annual COLA.
And just to remind everyone, both water and sewer, but more so, which one was the more problematic one when we first started 2 years ago? Was it?
Sewer.
Sewer?
is the more-
That was the one we had a more dramatic increase the first year, or over 2 years. The rate increases that we've done over the last 2 years was only to get us to break even operations. But it had nothing to do with any kind of raising funds for capital. So, you know,
Way you could just do that rate increase administratively instead of involving the council, or is that something?
no, I don't have that authority. So the one thing I will say is,
Enforce that.
the one thing I will say is, it's clearer when you get into what the actual rate change is. But, you know, if nothing else, even if nothing else changed, that keeps us just ahead of what inflation is. I think as we were doing calculations over the last year, it was like 2.5%. And so, so as we talk sewer, this is, I think we'll talk about some of the projects, but,
Can I have one more question?
Yeah.
Would the flexibility on the TLT play into that at all?
well, if we had flexibility from the state, yes.
That we could potentially not have to increase
It
rates?
didn't go through.
Oh, it didn't go through?
Oh,
Dang it.
there we go. Now, I will,
Let me say yet.
Okay.
Session's not over.
so, and I will say, this is one area where there is an argument that our tourists, well, some of our tourists pay their fair share, meaning the hotels and the restaurants pay a significant amount for their sewer bills, for their water bills. It's those day trippers that don't contribute to that as much and just take the free water.
That 3% over whatever the percentage was to the commercial
Yeah.
side of it.
We hit them a little harder.
Yeah.
Say, well, what about our rooms?
Not heard about it.
Yeah, it's the real impact is where we are spending general fund dollars, basically property tax dollars, on things like roads and parks and other things that are used by tourists. And that's where some of the flexibility we wanted to come in.
So can I ask, on two lines, materials and services, you're actually proposing less than you're projecting for the end of this year.
Yeah, but we're keeping the budget the same. And so, so this is what we're budgeted. We can talk to Zach. I mean, this is a projection of our spending continues. There is some ability to not spend as much, but we'll keep an eye on that. There wasn't, as the Public Works Director reviewed the budget, he didn't think that there was a need for a budget change. This is the kind of thing where if we see a pattern like this consistently for a few years, we probably want to look at addressing it. But if it's more of a one-off, we don't want to necessarily just increase the budget.
And revenue loss is in parens, so the 1.7 million is really in parens, right?
Yes, sorry, yeah, should be negative. And that really comes back to, it's the capital right here that puts us over. So in the sewer, what we have budgeted is, we've talked with the Improvement Commission about a sewer project on Wahana. That's not coming out here, though. That would be coming out of the Urban Renewal Agency. This is a more dire situation. It's the sewer lift station or pump station on 12th and Holiday, where 99% of the sewer flows through the city. And that thing could cave in on itself at any point. Most of the concrete in the concrete lined or the concrete well is, you can push your finger through it. And so that's a more dire situation. In fact, we were under an order from DEQ to get the lift station over on Wahana fixed. Once we explained to them the extent of the problems over here, they said, you don't have to prioritize this one first. I think our goal would be, well, I don't know, it would be nice to do them at the same time. The one on Wahana would be a new station. The one on 12th is a rebuild of what's there. So it's like 1.2 million. A brand new pump station is closer to 8 million. So not cheap.
So how much is the one on Wahana gonna cost?
It's just over 1 million, maybe 1.1. It's a lot smaller. So, I think, is that the only new sewer one? Could we have a sewer master plan that's in there?
So.
There's a slide up
Okay,
ahead.
So it's the replacement aerator, if that doesn't get done this year, if that gets done this year, that amount will be reduced by the corresponding.
And I've got a slide that has the list of projects, but I'll just kind of show this. So, this is where we are. You know, we want our revenue to be just above our expenses. We're fine. Take a big loss in this year. Seeing that we don't want to raise it to get to that because this is a one-time thing. So I think we're doing the right thing there.
And the red line reflect the 3%.
Yes. The one thing I will say is we are, now, I think, is this a 3% increase continually on the capital? But that being said, when the sewer master plan is completed, it will come with here's your projects over the next 10 years, and that's where we go in and actually build in the model and look at a 10-year run. Okay, how are we going to pay for this? What are we going to get in terms of grants, loans, user rates, and things like that? And it'll be less, I won't say less variable from year to year, but we'll have a long-term plan, and the goal would be to smooth out any changes. Water. Water is tighter than sewer, but the prospects going forward look better. And so the reason revenue looks so high here is, so we have the water tank painting project that we received a partially forgivable loan from the state, from Business Oregon. So we anticipated the project to be about $900,000. So we requested financing from the state of $1 million, which we were approved. $500,000 was the principal would be forgiven. $500,000 would be a 1% loan, which is great. We went out to bid. The bids closed a few weeks ago. We only had one bidder. And if we were to do the whole project, it was $2 million. The base of only doing the interior was about $1.2 million. But in working with some engineers to actually put the bid documents together, they really strongly recommended that we need to do the outside as well. It's a metal tank. In this environment, they say these are supposed to be a certain distance away from the ocean. It is by like maybe 50 feet. So they want to. So we think it's important that we paint the exterior as well and protect that. So the way it's being bid is we have the base bid of the minimum that needs to get done, and then we have some things that we'd like to add on. We'll see where it comes in. Our public works director, seeing that we only had received one bid, we had several companies come out in our pre-bid meeting who were interested, but they didn't submit bids. And it looked like the time frame in the bid documents was just a little too tight for them, didn't give them enough flexibility. And I think some of that was we want to keep that well out of service for as short amount as possible, but not to the extent that we want to pay that much more. And so in about a week or so, we anticipate going out to bid. Paul would like to have this project going in July with the goal of doing the exterior stuff over the summer, and then by September or October, starting to do the interior stuff when the water demand on the city is not as high. But operationally, we can have it out for longer periods. It just means some overtime we get to make the water on the weekends. Right now, we make the water on Friday that we need for the weekend, but it's better to pay some overtime for a couple of months on the weekends than, $1 million extra on the tank. So, and then you can see, so $1 million of this is the funding within the revenue, and then also in the capital, you see that jump there. Anything else Zach, you'd say on that?
So $1 million of that is, like you said, the loan that he was talking about.
Oh, there's another big thing to talk
There's
about.
also another, so in last year's discussion, we found that there was a loan that had been taken out between two funds in the city for almost 1.3 million, from the convention center bond reserve to water. That needs to be paid back. And so we're going to pay that back this year, but doing so and doing everything that we need to do next year puts the fund negative. And so the solution to that, without needing to raise rates to accommodate for it, was to take another loan, pay back loan A, take another loan from the convention center for the $600,000 difference to make the fund balance positive again over the course of the next few years. And in essence, what that'll do is it'll get us through, in 2027 is the last payment for our water general obligation bond. And if we can get to 2027, then the funding picture looks better. So the purpose of taking that loan from the convention center on the heels of the other loan is to bridge that gap from here to there to the point where it's generating a surplus again.
So is the second loan less than the first loan that we're paying back?
Yeah, it's less than half.
Okay.
So the loan from the convention center this time around is $600,000.
Yeah, and
Paid back over the course of 5
and
years.
as a refresher, sorry, I had an emergency at home. I had to text back, but the last loan was a loan to keep operations going instead of raising the rates to a point where they were paying for themselves, and those have to be paid back within the next year. This one, since it is for a capital, we have a couple years to pay it back, which is why we want to. Well, we have to pay one off, and then this was a way. Doing that smooths it out. Otherwise, the expenses would be much higher in this year. And as you can see, if we go back, no, that's not back. I mean, this right here, this is what our ending balance will be in the water fund. So we are very tight in terms of what will be left. But hopefully this is the last of the big projects. We'll have some projects in our watershed in upcoming years, but I don't anticipate anything significant projects. We will be, after we complete the sewer master plan, we'll be doing the water master plan update, so we'll see what comes out of that. And if that tells us something, but it certainly should not be anything close to what we're talking about in sewer.
The other hope that I have in rebidding this tank project is that we get bids that come in lower than the initial one, and so by the difference there will increase the fund balance at the end of the year on a 1-to-1 margin, right? So
all that to say, this is the data we're dealing with right now with the budget committee. By the time the council goes to adopt the budget in June, we should have an actual number that comes back from the
Why do you
bid.
think those bids would come in lower?
Because we only had one bid, and we had at least 3 other companies that wanted to bid but declined because the time frame was too narrow. So by rebidding, we expect to get 3 or 4 bids. So again, better competition, we'll get the best price. Any questions on sewer? All right, capital projects. So here are the capital projects that have already been included in the budget that are not yet complete and will carry over. The first one, HVAC units at the convention center, where that has been stuck is in putting the right kind of contract together. Luckily, with our new public works director, who has extensive experience in bidding and bid documents, he is working with Brian to put that together. So we expect finally to get that going. As that's been, I think this is the can't remember if last year was the first year or if it was the year before. This may be the second year, so. So the other thing I'd say is one of the reasons many of these are carryover is Public Works does a lot of these projects, and early last fall we lost both the Public Works Director and the Administrative Assistant in Public Works, and so our project manager, who would be doing a lot of these, was doing all 3 jobs for a good 5 months or something like that, and so a lot of them were on pause. So we still need to do the HVAC upgrades at City Hall. As I found out from yesterday when the system that's above my office was leaking into my office. The new roof at Public Works, it's being worked on, they just haven't had the time to actually get it done. When I say worked on, I know Ed's been working towards getting quotes and things like that.
And all these items are budgeted for already?
Yes, these are just, and they may have been more last year to the extent if some of them, we've spent some of them. So these are already in there. This is just a refresher of what's in there. HVAC at Public Works, the sewer dryer, we continue to make progress on that. We finally, for the council, just a few days ago, finally signed the new agreement after the attorneys have gone back and forth for a long time. I will say it was everything, we got everything we wanted, which was great. Again, continue to update the sewer master plan, visitor guide storage. I've asked Josh to kind of not only, well, in addition to getting a quote that has been working together, put together, is look at some other options, and then we'll just compare on the life of it and see, is it better to rent or lease space, or is it better just to own our own? Yeah, we've already talked about the water tank, water master plan. Will come on the heels of the sewer master plan. And then acquisition of land in the watershed. Like I mentioned to the council already, we are trying to purchase about $1 million worth of extra property. We put in for a grant. We're going to put in $200,000, and so they would provide $800,000. I think there were 7 projects that applied. They had enough funding for the first 5. No, there were 6 projects. They had enough funding for the first 4, and we were number 5. With that being said, the North Coast Land Conservancy, who we've been working with on this, the community that was first in line, or got first place, is someone, they were working on their application as well, and this was after multiple years of applying each year. They finally made it, and they were at the top of the list. So they said it's not necessarily unexpected, and so everything looked good. It's just they only had that much funding. There were 2 kind of the only 2 concerns with our application. One is our watershed. Was it the watershed plan, which was put together, I think, 2019. It's what your plan is for your watershed, and the current one is a plan to basically log our watershed in order to raise the funds to purchase more. That doesn't go well with OWEB that's trying to, so that was, now we told them, and they believed us, that we're going in a different direction, but that is our adopted document. So I will say it's been great partnering with the Land Conservancy. They noticed just the other week that a grant had opened up for updating those plans. And so we are going to be applying for that, and we're hoping to get $70,000 from a different state grant source. We need to put in $10,000, and we'd get, I can't remember if we get 60 or we get 70, but then we would go out and contract and have an updated plan that reflects our current plan, which is to expand it for the purpose of conserving it, letting it grow, managing it so that we increase both the water quantity and the water quality. And in conversations, I think we met earlier this week with the Conservancy, some of the studies have shown that in areas that have a well-managed forest, it's about a 50% increase in the water flows, at the lowest point of the season compared to the same areas or similar areas that don't have those protections. And so, again, thinking of, a generation, several generations, the next 100 years, want to ensure that we have the water needed for the city. So the good thing is there are lots of funding sources available. We are also in talks with the Climate Trust, and so there are those who want to purchase our carbon credits on the watershed we have now. So in exchange for agreeing not to log it, they're going to give us like $1 million or something like that that we can then use towards probably either maintaining the watershed or land acquisition. So,
Store that gets money.
yeah.
So before we move on from this, there's been a multi-year plan to put women's showers into the cove.
Yes.
I don't know if it rises to this level, but the showers have been purchased by Dale, and then Mike had them and didn't install them, and now they're sitting there.
They are, I know, it's come up from the Parks Committee, and I haven't been, I don't know if Bill has an answer. I've been working with Paul, what's that? Oh, you got an answer. I've been working with Paul and Ed on that. I think we finally have some momentum. The problem is, the way it was going is, the way Dale was designing it, is we are gonna have to bring in an on-demand gas water heater at the shower site, and it was just like, it was not a good idea. And so that's what kind of the pause is on, but I know there's been pressure back on and they're looking at it. And what's the update, Councilor Pozowski?
Update is they've got a design for it, and they found where the water heater is, and they've got a place for it, and it was presented at the Parks Committee, and they're just about ready to move forward with it. June is what he's trying to do.
Wow. I get lit up about that one constantly, so thank you.
So do the surfer
So are
ladies.
the other showers there hot showers too?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Cold.
Shower's gonna be.
No, it's warm. It's just on the other side. I think there's a,
I think the women don't necessarily want to shower.
they want a dedicated
Not in the
children's
back, yeah,
room.
they were gonna move them out where the picnic
Yeah.
table is, right?
And I think that still is the plan.
Yeah, it's gonna go
Yeah.
out there. There's gonna be a paved area between 10 by 10 and 10 by 20, depends how what they come up with.
I thought they were gonna do that. I thought it was gonna be cold showers though, but.
They found where the water heater was. There was a water heater already in there that they're gonna be able to go from.
Okay.
And so,
All I know is I did not want a mechanical gas thing out there.
Yeah, warm showers are much more popular with surfers.
and then we had conversations about putting a rack where people can actually.
It
hang
may
their
also
stuff
be
on there.
popular with everyone.
Yeah, yeah.
For women now.
Do we charge for those?
No,
No.
they're free.
It's
Just
no,
out in the
it's,
open.
it's no different than like the showers you have down at the turnaround, except for these ones are warm.
You get 2 seconds at a time.
Yeah, no soap,
Really?
3 shower heads.
New project, I mean, we've taken on a lot, but we want to at least get the budget here so we can be moving forward. Just above our headworks, we've noticed that on the road, it is starting where you have the river coming through here, the road going along it, and it's carving in and it's undermining the road. And so we need to go in soon so the road doesn't collapse. It's not a road that we need, other than it provides our secondary access. And so the more pertinent issue is if it does, there will be a large amount of sediment that'll get sucked right into our system, and we want to avoid that. The next two is really what I had Zach do is budget almost all of our money that can be for roads. We've started going through with our new public works director, the pavement preservation plan. There's a lot of work to do to decide what projects are there. We're not there yet. We'll continue to work on what those are, but we want to have these funded, so as soon as we have that plan put together, we're ready to go. This is the water pump station we've already talked about. This is for the Urban Renewal Agency. This is the one that's budgeted in sewer. And then park design studies. So this would be landscape architecture designed for the North 40, for the Estuary Park, and for Quatat Park for a improvement there. And so instead of just kind of replacing with what's there, both Quatat and the estuary want to bring in someone that can maybe give us more options and how they can be used and things like
And
that.
for Quatat and Estuary, we can use TLT.
I think for North 40 as well.
Really? Good deal.
That's my plan.
Yay.
So I think those will be exciting projects, especially, I mean, these are really important, but no one's gonna see them or care about them, but here's something right here for our residents to be able to use, and I think that will be well received. What's that?
Don't forget to say, and our tourists.
Yes.
They may not see them, but they'll feel the asphalt changes.
Yeah, they'll feel.
Okay, what else do we have? Okay, so last thing I have for today is going through all the budget requests. You saw all the requests. I don't take out the ones I don't recommend and things like that. I want you to see them. Some of them, like our grant, may need to come before you for a couple of years till they get recommended. Some I may never recommend, but I want you to know what our department heads are requesting. And so what I've done is I've gone through, and with the help of Zach, put into the budget what I'm recommending. But this will be an area of conversation at next week's meeting. So next week we'll have the public hearing and then discussions from the budget committee on, is this the right combination of new budget items? Are there other budget items that anyone on the committee or on the council wants to bring forward? So next week would be the time to kind of bring those forward for consideration and deliberation, and we'll kind of go through. This is the, what do we want to do new next year? So within the general fund, again, I'm heavily gravitating towards, we have some savings, let's get some things done with that we can. So replacing these doors, I don't want any more workers' comp claims. The main hall doors, the ADA. I'm not sure how badly the HVAC is needed at the library, but I at least want to have some money in there to get a study done, to understand it. I don't think it's the highest priority, but I would hate to need it sooner than we've budgeted for it. Same with the library furniture refresh. After it was described to me what they go through, I was all in favor. I'm not recommending any renovations at the administrative side of City Hall, and not recommending the extra 10 hours for the youth library assistant. And I think it's a great thing. It's just very expensive for 10 hours of extra programming, and so.
Did you have the same request last
Yeah.
year? So you just think it's too expensive?
It's $40,000 to get 10 more hours of programming. That's what it
And a
is.
bunch of federal funding has gotten cut from the library, so they're not gonna have as many youth programs as much?
I have to go back and talk to Jennifer. I think it affects us more indirectly than directly. It may be some of the services you get through the state and things like that.
The extra hours for the youth library assistant allow Marion, the youth librarian, to actually go out into the community more and to work closer with the schools and with the organizations that have children. So she's doing double duty at this point, trying to do the programming at the library as well as the outreach that is essential to the population.
I have no issues with the request. To me, it's just prioritizing the money that we do have, and so this is precisely what we want. I want to have you all discuss and deliberate on next week. Is we fund one thing, that means we can't fund others, and so what's the priority? These are just my recommendations. Public safety, continue with the patrol vehicle replacement. the communications manager reclassification, the tasers, I want to come back to my asterisks, not recommending the increase in materials and service budget. So I've reviewed the budget. While there are some areas where they are over, there are other areas where they are under, and I think there is some reallocation that can happen and not an increase in budget needed. I will say with our new software, it's going to be much easier for our departments to be tracking that and stuff like that.
Could you explain your aspect?
Yes, that's why, yeah. So these are both ones that I think likely we need to do and I support, but there is more work needed. And so what I am proposing is that we budget for these, but we budget it in contingency, not in the department budget. For contingency, in order for us to spend it, we need to come back and get approval from the city council. I am very supportive of the 2 full-time firefighter positions, but there are 2 things I'm looking for. One is, if we do have the budget to do it, I think we need to be applying for grants similar to the ones we already got, where they pay a significant amount for the first couple of years. That's money we'd be turning away. I don't know right now what the status of the funding is, but if it's not here, I suspect it will be coming back. That's a popular funding that most people are supportive of the firefighters. And then secondly, there's some more work to be done on how the shifts are scheduled. Just the way our department has grown up, we're heavy on the admin, and I want to see more of that turned into operations dealing with the coverage before I'm ready to sign off on that. So there's some work for me and Zach and John to do with the fire department. I think the needs there. The current proposal, I think, just needs some changes, and so we would come back to the council when we're ready for that. The repeater and the microwave, I think, is likely. I want to understand it a little bit better, but also we need to do since Zach and I have been here, we have not done a comprehensive study of what is our dispatching costs, how are we dividing that up between the 3 different cities. I have a feeling while their call volume is much less, I don't know if we've been capturing everything. We probably are doing well at capturing the operational side of dispatch, but I don't know about the equipment and whatnot. So I think there's some things I want to understand better there and have some discussions with Gerhardt and with Cannon Beach before we pull the trigger. For example, I don't think this is the case, but if this were only serving Gerhardt, I'd be asking them for the $150,000. I don't think that's the case, but that's the kind of discussions. I think there's some more work needed, so this is a good placeholder.
Thank you.
Public Works, the radar speed trailer and or counter. Again, it's really all of their requests were for one-time purchases or one-time projects, and many of them, like the vehicle replacements, will get us to where that can drop off till we have more of a maintenance level of replacing one a year, things like that. They didn't have any that were ongoing, which we're in a better position to fund these. Community development, I did say, tell Jeff that he could have $1,000 to have updated building codes. I do think we need to continue with the barrel cash. I think the EOC backup power generator, that's a tough one where it's very expensive. It's maybe $80,000 for something that we may or may not use. If we have an emergency and all the power's out and that's the only place, we're gonna wish we had it. If that doesn't happen, we would have wished we had the money. And so this is another one where what's the council's feelings on that? I have asked Ann to be looking at grants for this. In the past, it's been very good as grant eligible, and we did apply for one this year. We didn't get it, and it sounds like the funding that's traditionally gone for emergency management is shifting away from some of this physical stuff to things towards cyber crimes and cyber attacks that have are just as problematic for communities, but that is where the emphasis seems to be. And so we may not have grants available, but I wasn't quite there yet.
Instead of getting the ultimate generator that would be like serve all your needs, why not just get a scaled down generator that would get the job done in a worst case scenario?
So I think the real issue is just having, well, I'm not the generator expert, and so I can go ask them. I think one of the issues is having something that will have enough fuel and things like that. I don't know what the capacity needs to be in size and stuff like
We don't
that.
need
So,
that size of generator to run that
So.
one portable.
Yeah. Well, my question is if we're replacing if we're replacing the sewer station on Wahana, the pump station that has World War II generator, let's throw a World War II generator up there.
we may have
Is that what they
two.
already have?
Yeah, we may have 2 or 3 World War
There we
II
go.
generators.
We hook up this radio to that one and this radio
One
to
of them
that
ought to
one.
start, right?
We'll just have one of those hand cranks to keep it
Let's
going.
remember that, we're not having this discussion right now.
Yeah. Tsunami siren maintenance. We have the capacity today to go on and put out alerts, an iPause alert that will hit every cell phone within a whatever area we carve out on the mapping system. And so I think to replace the tsunami sirens, I think they were about $125,000 10 or 15 years ago. Be a lot more now. And I go back to what is the effectiveness of a siren on the beach compared to if all 70,000 people that are in here on a busy day or else get a notification, like an Amber Alert type thing on their phone of a warning. And let me back up and say, this is not for Cascadia. For Cascadia, your warning is the earthquake. You start running when the earthquake comes. This is for a FAR event, which is typically you have a 4-hour window. So the question is, if we already have the technology to notify every cell phone in the city, and those people are going to start moving, the few people that don't have a cell phone will see something's going on. And so I think technologically, there are better options that we already have. For some people, this provides a certain comfort level, and so this is a discussion we certainly can have. And it's not my intent necessarily in the budget process to discuss this. I know Cannon Beach recently made some changes. It wasn't rolled out very well, I would say. And so if we were to consider changes, it would need to be part of a very out there campaign about the only reason we would be doing away with this is because we have a much better plan and this is what it is and things like that. So that is a discussion.
This at our next meeting, is that what you said?
Yeah, everything that's in here will be up for whatever the budget committee wants to discuss, and so,
And we'll get a printout, or I mean a PDF.
yeah, I can send a PDF to everyone. So, and I don't think so whether or not we have this service, this is a policy issue for the council.
Yes,
So
yes.
the purpose of this meeting is, do we want to set that aside for that or not? And so we could set it aside, but put a placeholder on it. Yeah, it's budgeted in case we want to do it, but not authorized to be spent or something like that. And then have the appropriate discussion at the right time.
Yes.
Enterprise funds, recommending all of them. Again, most of them are coming out of our transient lodging tax. And then it's 1 vehicle in sewer, 2 vehicles, 2 in sewer, 1 in water, and then the TV replacement for sewer. That's
Can I
the,
ask a question?
yep.
We still have not formalized our goals that we all sat together on as a council. And it really would be helpful that we have those available as we are looking at the budget. But one thing I do remember is that high up on our goals was to start looking at considering, et cetera, vertical evacuation structures. And I'm a little concerned if we think that this is something we want to pursue, that we don't have anything reflected in our budget to start considering it, because there's a cost to considering it. You have to do feasibility studies, you have to do this, you have to do that. So that's just something I
Sure.
want to throw out in the middle of the room.
And I would say, I think the staff member said that was probably the highest thing that came out of that. And I think at this point, we would have no clue of what to budget. But where it's a project that if we were going to budget now, it would be coming out of our savings. When we have a better idea of what kind of a budget we would need, what the next steps are, that we would come back and work with the budget committee to open that back up. Now, we could set something aside now, just like some of the other things we've talked about, for something like that, but I don't know if we need to set aside $50,000, $500,000. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to even just put what are the milestones together and things like that. So it's just new enough right now that there just wasn't enough to put in here.
It just,
So,
it
yeah.
feels like a disconnect for me that we don't have our goals being attached at the budget level. Because it seems that that's a purpose of both of those things.
Yes, I don't disagree, and we're good on that.
Why is there no money budgeted for the actual park's construction? Is it not happening this next fiscal year?
Yeah, I don't anticipate the North 40 would be built next year.
Would it be started at least this fiscal year potentially?
It could. I think that would be fast, but it could be. Again, if that's the case, and we are using TLT and we have the funds, it'd be a matter of just coming back. But it may be that once the plan, I guess I would look at, we've budgeted for plans that will dictate kind of what the budget is. And again, where it's so, we just don't know what that is. Usually I'm just to kind of wait till we get a better idea, so we're at least in the ballpark.
I just feel like we've made a lot of progress on North 40. We're close to pulling the trigger and getting it started.
We're close to pulling the trigger on design.
Looking at a design.
Can
We
I
aren't even at the design yet.
Well, we've seen, potential
Concepts.
Can I add one thing? So the North 40 is a project that would be eligible for system development charges. And so there is $75,000 set aside in systems developments for parks in case that comes to pass, right? So the planning will definitely have the $75,000, but there is some money there.
There may be some to start the project.
Right, there is money there to start it if that comes to pass. The other option would be that we could call this body back into session if we got far enough down that road and say, we need to pass a supplemental budget for parks because we don't want to wait on this until the next fiscal year.
Technical question, what is the point of a change in the budget that only requires council versus the budget committee?
So council can increase the budget that the budget committee recommends by up to 10%. That's statutorily what you're allowed to do.
So the council also, like we talked about, needs to approve any spending of contingency.
Correct.
And then if we amend the budget less than 10%,
Yeah, you can reduce
Council-
it by whatever amount you want. You can't increase it by more than 10% without.
Not a plus or a minus of 10%.
I'd have to double check. I thought it was.
Fund adjustments. and all of
Fair
that.
enough. That could be true. I thought you could reduce it,
There's
but
nothing that requires the budget committee to come back into session. It's
only if there's a supplemental budget.
supplemental.
yeah.
Correct.
Supplemental, that's when, if it's more than the 10%. So next meeting, sorry, go.
Yeah, out of curiosity, what was the situation with Avenue S doing that redone bridge and all that stuff? Is that something down the road? Is that-
So when I first got here, it was budgeted for.
Right.
But it was budgeted for, but it had $9 million of,
$8 million?
$8 million of grant revenue budget for it, that there was no grant. Yeah. So we had the money to do the road part, but not the bridge. And so when I got here, it was, the hope was to do all of it together. I don't think that's realistic. And so the Avenue S part will either be considered as part of the Improvement Commission's budget on the urban renewal, because it is a project within that, or as part of the pavement preservation plan. So it'll be one of those. But again, that will be the tough decision that our council will get to make of, do you want to make, 20 streets a little bit better or one street a lot better? And I look forward to those discussions. So anyways, so that's where that is. I will say, for those of you who were at our previous Improvement Commission meeting, that is starting to get good funds in there. So I think there are some significant projects. I mean, being able to do this Wahana pump station now as opposed to doing a minor fix to it and coming back and replacing it later is great. And it's only going to continue to grow in revenue. And so I think there's some really good things we're going to be able to do. But again, there's going to be lots of choices too, lots of options.
We're effectively spending this 1.2 million is just the earnings from this last year. More.
Yes, yeah,
So,
but the earnings are also going up each year, so, yeah. So it's almost like at the end of this year, our ending fund balance will be the same, but we'll have a new pump station. So with that, I will turn it back to our chair, and I'm happy to stick around and answer any little questions. I will say, as usual, if you have questions, specific questions, reach out to Zach and I. The more prepared we can be for the discussions next week, the better. So reach out, questions, or if you want help understanding something, we're here to help you, and we look forward to it next week.
Can I add a couple caveats before we wrap?
Oh, he does want to answer your questions.
So
Can I beat you to it? I was going to suggest much better if you could write it out and send it to him.
Yes,
Agreed.
yeah.
Not call.
Right.
Something just really quick.
Yeah.
Because whatever you write is something he's probably going to send out to everybody afterwards.
Yep.
So.
Yep. So I put this caveat out every year. Spencer mentioned it at the beginning. We have tried really hard to iterate on this process every year. I think we've got significantly better since we first started. That doesn't mean that this model is 100% bulletproof, right? So there may be formula errors here and there that may happen, and if you find them, please let me know. Tita, I know you will. So please.
But you need to send me the budget in an Excel spreadsheet then, because I can't find formula errors in PDFs.
The problem is all the spreadsheets are linked to
Yes.
different ones.
Yes, I know.
So I think what he means, not necessarily the formula, but you can tell something doesn't look right.
If the
Yes.
bottom line doesn't look right.
Right. That's what I meant more so. But yeah, by all means, the more eyes on this, the better. I know off the bat, please don't tell me the table of contents is off. I know it's off. It was a mad scramble to get this out the door today. So
I will say we were printing and ready to go when the last few changes had to be made. I said, stop the press, do it again.
So-
I want to have, this is our pencils down budget. I know there'll be little things, but this is our working document.
So I don't like to use the, my dog ate my homework excuse, but last night when Spencer and I were wrapping this up, my computer completely crashed. And so I lost any ability to work from my office for the last 24 hours or so. So it was a bit of a scramble to get this done. But with that, let's take a look.
Any other comments? And with that, I'll recess until our next meeting. It's next Wednesday, April 16th at 3 o'clock.